Thank you so much. Good afternoon or good morning. I am Joan Breslin-Larson. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. It's one of a series of webinars about the quality indicators for assistive technology services. Today we're going to be talking about the quality indicators for administrative support for AT. I am Joan Breslin-Larson. I work at the Minnesota Department of Education, where I'm a supervisor in the Special Education Division. My work focuses on students with low incidence disabilities as well as on teacher recruitment and retention so that we have a viable workforce for doing all the wonderful things in special ed that we need to do. And joining me is Dr. Penny Reed.
Hello, I'm Penny Reed, and my background is I was a special educator for many years, and I've worked in assistive technology since it was first identified as a requirement in IDEA. I'm now a private consultant, and we're going to do a poll. Joan's going to do that.
We've told you a little bit about who we are, and so if you'd just like to respond to tell us who you are you an administrator, someone who focuses their work in AT, a resource specialist, a case manager or a social worker, family member, librarian, related services, OT/PT, speech and language pathologist, a teacher, or somebody else. And I see the responses are coming in. That's terrific. Thank you. We'll give you just another few seconds. Okay, our numbers are pretty stable now, so we'll go ahead and we'll see that the majority of you who are responding are assistive technologists, and then we have speech and language pathologists, and 12.8% of you say that you're other, and that's interesting. If you want to use the chat box and tell me what that other is, that'd be really fun. And the thing that's interesting is even though I've had a range of jobs over my life and career, what I call myself always is an assistive technology specialist. So despite other titles, that's still kind of my first place of being. So thanks for all of your responses. We'll go Penny.
Okay, I just wanted to point out that this is the 9th in the series on the quality indicators for assistive technology. I hope some of you have listened to one or more of the previous ones. The first 6 we did were on direct services to students, so consideration, assessment, documenting AT in the IEP, implementation, evaluation of effectiveness, and transition. Last month was on professional development, and today we're going to focus on administrative support. So sort of stepping back and taking a bigger picture of what assistive technology programs can be and should be. We have another poll, and I would like to know, well, Joan and I would both like to know what your experience is with the quality indicators. Are you familiar with them and using them? Are you helping others use them? Are you familiar but not using, or are they not familiar to you? So I see we have a few people for whom this is brand new, so that's pretty exciting for us. I'll give just a few more seconds because their answers are rolling in as you decide how best to identify yourself with this one. This is my third webinar in this series, and I've certainly enjoyed the opportunity to talk to people and the questions that you've asked and your comments at the end. So I see we've got pretty stable response here. So 42% of you are familiar but not necessarily using them right now. 27, almost 28% are using them. 8.5% are helping others use them. And I'm really interested that we have 21% of our audience was not familiar with them. I really want to urge you to find time to go back and look at a few, if not all, of those previous sessions where we've really talked specifically about the direct services to students, because I think if you're not familiar with the quality indicators, you need to take a look at those to have a sense of the big picture of what all this is. So we're going to get started now. There are 7 indicators in this area of administrative support, and the first one says that the education agency has written procedural guidelines that ensure equitable access to assistive technology devices and services for students with disabilities if required for a free, appropriate public education. This is really one of the core issues in providing quality assistive technology services. Our intent is really that all teachers and therapists and administrators in your district would know how to obtain assistive technology for a student. And what we see across the country is that if there are not guidelines somewhere, some kind of procedures in place, then few know what to do. And when that happens, AT is not equitably provided. When the majority don't know it's even a possibility or who to contact, it just can't happen. So we really want to avoid the situation where AT may go only to a few students who maybe fit a certain profile or have a certain diagnosis or in a specific placement. When that happens, really inequity and chaos reign. We're going to give you a chance to think about how these apply to you and where your education agency might be in regard to them. So with each quality indicator, we will have for you one of the matrices, one of the self-evaluation matrices. As you can see, the quality indicators repeated at the top. And then we have 5 variations from unacceptable on the left to promising practice on the right. And we want you to know that we know that the words don't always exactly fit your situation. And that's not the critical piece. The critical piece is to find the one that generally best describes where you are in your specific situation. We're not asking you to respond. We don't want people to have to say whether they have this procedural guidelines in place or not. We're not here to embarrass anybody, but it's for you to reflect and to think about, so where are we? And of course, that's how we can grow and change, is by figuring out where we are in regard to what could be. And I wanted to tell you that the handouts for today's session feature both the quality indicators with their intent statement and then also the self-evaluation matrices. If your answer was, we don't have anything like that, Joan and I just wanted to suggest one resource for you. This is called a Model Operating Guidelines from the Oregon Technology Access Program. It's designed to be a model of what you could have in your district, so it gives you a sense of what would go in procedures about assistive technology. It's really kind of a template. You wouldn't use exactly these words, but it would show you the kinds of things that could be there. It has 2 sections. The first one is guidance for the team that can be actually written in a district procedures manual. And the second part are sample forms that you might be able to use to implement services. So that's the first resource we wanted to share with you.
The second quality indicator says that the education agency broadly disseminates clearly defined procedures for accessing and providing AT services and supports, and then it supports the implementation of those guidelines. When I look at the intent statement for this one, I want to call out certain terms. One is that they're ready available in multiple formats, and that everyone's aware of how to locate the procedures and are expected to follow those procedures whenever possible, or follow whenever it's appropriate. We always do it. This indicator helps us think about the ways that we assure that all staff have access to those procedures that we talked about previously. When I like to think about the principles of adult education that says adults really need to have information available to them when they need that information. So by making the procedures available in multiple formats, educators have ways that they can reach that in a way that's comfortable for them at the time they need it. Some ideas and strategies that might be helpful for adults to have access to these might be having them posted digitally in hard copy, located, stored on a website. Some folks might want to have cheat sheets with guiding questions that will help with this, or flowcharts to help teams have access to supports and resources when they need them. And here again, we see the innovation configuration matrix that shows the practices from least wonderful on the left to most wonderful on the right. And I want to reiterate what Penny said. It's really important that when you look at this and you find yourself on the scale and you're saying, well, we're just really not very good at this, or don't consider that to be a weakness. Consider it to be an opportunity to show what growth would look like. Because when we look at the matrix, we see that, for example, if my district or my school or my personal practice says that there's a plan for dissemination exists, but it's not been implemented, well, that helps me to say, okay, what would that better practice look like? And we might want to say, okay, let's look at the rating for number 3 or number 4, because that's what would be good change. I'm going to strongly encourage you to not say, I need to jump from 1 to 5. That's kind of an impossible jump to do within a short period of time. So what I want you to encourage you to do is look at gradual incremental growth.
We have a comment here before we go on. You've asked to see the Oregon address again. Let me just quickly go back to that. It's www.otap-oregon. So if you just Google OTAP-Oregon, the website will come up, and under publications, you will see the OTAP publication.
And actually, I'll type that into the chat box, because I think
Thank you, and that would be good,
case.
because I think you added that slide, and maybe it's not in the handouts.
Okay.
I'm going to go on to quality indicator number 3 for administrative support, and that states that the education agency includes appropriate assistive technology responsibilities in written descriptions of job requirements for each position in which activities impact assistive technology services. Now, I know some of us are still struggling to get an assistive technology job description for someone whose job is primarily assistive technology. But we're not even talking just about that. We're talking about all individuals who provide some services to students. So the general education teacher who's expected to help implement the IEP by adapting her instruction, providing extra guidance perhaps, or extra time, and ensuring that the student's AT is available to him, needs to know that those things are expected of her. This is something that we don't see often enough yet. It's still something that's developing across the country. You know, it's kind of a similar concept to UDL to me. Instead of afterwards telling somebody they have to do AT, if we had embedded it in the job descriptions of our teachers, our therapists, our administrators, so they know that supporting students who use assistive technology is part of the expectations for them, it makes it much easier when a student is in their setting. We are back to our famous matrices, and this one, of course, the unacceptable would be no job requirements relating to AT are written at all. And the best would be that they're written for all personnel who provide AT services, and that those are clearly aligned to their job responsibilities. Wouldn't it be fabulous if every school principal knew in advance that her job includes asking teachers how they are implementing the IEPs for their students in their classrooms, including asking them how those students are doing with their AT? How's it impacting your day? Have you seen more success from that student? If we just knew in advance we should be focusing on this, it would make it work so much better.
Okay, the next indicator, indicator 4, says the education agency employs personnel with the competencies needed to support quality assistive technology services within their primary areas of responsibility at all levels of the organization. And the intent statement talks about something that's really important. There's different knowledge, skills, and levels of understanding that are required for jobs all across the education agency, but all are able to understand and find their role in fulfilling this and maintaining a collaborative system. This really is my favorite indicator just because it talks about the roles that various folks have. So, for example, I like to talk about the bus driver. You think, well, what does the bus driver have to do with assistive technology? Well, if we have a student who's using a pretty high-end communication device, it's the bus driver's job to make sure that when the student gets on the bus, that device is stored appropriately and not to take off and have the device hit the wall and go flying. How about the lunch lady? Well, in the past we've always had that para pushing the kiddo in the wheelchair, and the para says, "Oh, well, little Timmy wants a hot dish today." Hot dish is a Minnesota term; it means casserole. But with the role and responsibility of the lunch lady in her supporting assistive technology, we now say, by the way, Tim's going to be using this communication device to talk. It might take a few minutes for him to ask for what he wants, but make sure you stop, be patient, and listen so that Tim has the opportunity to communicate about what he wants for lunch today. Now, professional staff are, of course, going to need some specific training, and we all know about the role of the speech and language pathologist, the assistive technologist, but let's talk about the role of the general educator to keep the speech and language pathologist apprised of academic language. This is something that I found we miss a lot. So when a student's going to go into a new module for meeting the academic standards in English language arts, the general educator, the English teacher, is going to say, by the way, we're going to be reading Ivanhoe in our next curriculum module, and so we need to make sure that the student has access to really interesting words like Rowena and Cedric and Wamba, which are not terms that are going to come up in general conversation, so that's specific academic language that in order for the student to participate in that curriculum needs to have that language. So those are all roles that various folks have to play. And again, we're looking at our innovation configuration matrix, and this range of competencies are going to help in including competencies across the position description. This is going to help us target specific skills and recognize when the skills are in place so that when the administrator is doing hiring, they can make sure that they identify and they hire the right person who has assistive technology competencies to work in their district.
And Joan, while you do this one, I'll type in the URL that's at the bottom.
Oh, terrific. Just last week we found in eSchool News a really nice brief paper that talked about the 5 qualities of a tech-savvy administrator. This was written specifically for a general educator, but I think that the skills and competencies that they talk about also apply to thinking about assistive technology. And so there are 5 things that we'd like an administrator to be able to do: to learn from and listen to teachers and what they have to say about technology. You know, we classroom teachers are with students all day, and they use technologies and tools with those students. And a really tech-savvy administrator knows that it's important to listen to teachers to find out if something works, doesn't work, or is incredibly effective. Teachers are the first ones who are going to see what works in their practice. I think it's great for administrators to say, it's okay to fail. You don't have to be perfect right out of the gate. We're going to tweak, we're going to learn, and figure out how to make this work, but a failure is also an opportunity to learn. A good administrator is going to learn from and listen to students. The student voice in what technology is appropriate for them is a powerful one. Today's students are going to be tomorrow's workforce, and learning is changing and becoming more tech-based and personalized, so students really want to have a say in how they learn. Administrators should model the success that they want to see, and that means that they want to see teachers engaged in collaborative planning. They want to talk about using progressive or innovative or emerging good technology. So a good tech-savvy administrator is going to be out there using technology, supporting the use of technology, and they're going to value stakeholders. They're going to be valuing the community members, the business owners, the parents, students. All of us are technology and education stakeholders. All of us have the potential to contribute to and change local districts for the better, and all of us have an important voice to add to that. So it's a brief little paper. I would encourage you to find it and read it. I was really excited when I found that.
Thank you, Joan. And as we move into the next one, quality indicator number 5, it ties in very much with what Joan was just sharing with you. It talks about the education agency includes assistive technology in the technology planning and budgeting process. And this is an important thing to think about. Every school district has a technology plan. And the wording in that technology plan often says things like, all students will have access to. But you know, they're not necessarily talking about students with special needs unless someone from special education or with a background and knowledge in serving students with disabilities and providing assistive technology, unless someone with that knowledge participated in the technology plan. When they say all students, they're just simply saying there's enough computers for a specific ratio that's deemed to be acceptable, that there's wiring to every building, and things like that. They're not thinking about children with special needs unless someone is on that technology planning committee and making sure that that wording is in there and that that thinking is part of the process. So both budgeting and technology planning go together, because without being included in the plan, you're not included in the budget. So I would just say to you that if in your setting you don't have anyone participating on the technology planning committee, see if you can make that happen. I was glad to see we have some administrators participating today, because I think you have more power perhaps to make that happen. So if you're not an administrator, talk to your administrator about that, because it's a critical piece. In the school districts where there's a good working relationship between AT and IT, and where folks from special ed are part of that technology planning process and budgeting process, there is much more access to the equipment that's needed by students with disabilities. Here's our matrix. I'll give you a few seconds to look at that. And again, the variations are from nothing, which we know is unacceptable, to having it included in the agency-wide technology planning and budgeting process in a way that meets AT needs throughout the agency. So this is one where it got tougher to describe the different variations from 1 through 5, so you'll have to find a best fit as you think about, well, where are we? I want to share with you an example of how assistive technology can be included in your technology plan and in your self-evaluation of your technology services in your district. This is an excerpt from the Massachusetts School Technology and Readiness Chart, where they had a number of focus areas. And of course, I chose the one that talks about providing universal access, and it mentions both universal design and assistive technology, and shows the levels of progress from emerging to advanced technology, where we talk about a seamless integration of assistive technology to promote access to the curriculum. So we're not necessarily outside of the technology planning process. There are fine examples like this. You may have one in your state, or you certainly could borrow it from this one and take it to your district and even to your state, but it's important to make that happen. One more resource we wanted to share, and I believe this one is in your original PowerPoint, so you should have it in your handouts, but it's from Power Up What Works, and it just talks about becoming involved in the general technology initiatives. So that's something you can download from Power Up What Works.
Okay, the next indicator talks about the education agency providing access to ongoing learning opportunities about assistive technology for staff, family, and students. This indicator is very important because we know that learning opportunities are critical for success of AT. One of the things that we know is that if we don't have the supports for assistive technology, we don't have success in using technology. So we have to have training and technical assistance on a range of topics, all about the selection, acquisition, or use of AT. And these need to happen in a range of, a variety of modes, through webinars like this, through face-to-face opportunities, going to an AT fair or a conference, or very targeted training on a specific tool for a specific child. And then we also need to think about ongoing professional development, particularly when a student has a piece of AT that crosses environments. Supports for that child in all environments need some training. And then we also need to think about changes in student practice and behavior. So once they have the assistive technology, what's changed? What else can they do what skills and opportunities have come up, and then we need to retrain as we look at opportunities to find new and better ways to use the technology, or to challenge the student to do even more than they could without the technology, or now that they have additional skills and use of that assistive technology. So, and here is our innovation configuration matrix. And we see that the unacceptable practice is that there is no learning opportunities for AT are provided, to the best practice, which says learning opportunities related to AT are provided on an ongoing basis to address the changing needs of students with disabilities, their families, and the staff who serve them. And so I just really want to stress how important it is to be a constant learner and always engaging in that professional development in a variety of ways. One of the things we did here in Minnesota a couple of years ago is look at what we thought professional development, how many hours you needed to put in a year to become really effective in assistive technology. And I counted up the hours that I spend on my own professional development, and was easily over 100 hours a year. And we didn't use that as our standard for all educators in Minnesota because it was just because it was my passion and it was my primary job. But we do want to say that continuous, ongoing, and deep AT training is really critical for your work.
Joan, we had a comment about Smarter Balance requiring technology for Braille readers. Do you have a comment about that? I'm not familiar with Smarter Balance.
When we talk about Smarter Balance, is this the testing, the test delivery for statewide assessment?
I think it could be.
Yeah.
So the comment was just that, if that's a requirement, then you're going to have staff who can operate those devices. So
yeah, and I think that's a good comment, John. Smarter Balance does require specific technology, and I do have a comment about that IEP teams determine what is the correct technology for an individual student, and a test company cannot drive a technology choice for a student. If the student needs a particular device for access to instruction, that's the one the IEP team should be looking at. So I just want to make sure that even though some test companies might say this is the technology you use, instruction does trump assessment, and probably I'm going to, go to a Department of Education jail for saying that, but instruction is far more important to me than assessment.
Yes, and John comments that Smarter Balance is being used in 26 states for testing.
Right. Yeah, Minnesota is not one of the states that is in either of the testing consortia, so we're not part of either Smarter Balance or the other one that I'm blanking on right now. But it is really, really critical that we give important and critical thought to what the student needs for instruction. And I'll get off my soapbox right now.
Okay, thanks for helping with that one, Joan.
Okay.
The seventh indicator is the education agency uses a systematic process to evaluate all components of the agency-wide assistive technology program. To be effective, all programs have to be evaluated, and it's something that sometimes we're so busy doing our job that we don't get the chance or don't take the chance to step back and do a program evaluation, but it's critical for AT as much as any other program. And when you do a program evaluation, that is what you do. You step back. You look at how are we doing? What do our evaluations say? How are we at responding to calls? Are people finding our information helpful? We can do a survey of people who have used the services. We can talk to the teachers, or the therapists, the students themselves, or the parents, and solicit their input into how are things going and how can we make it better. It's my belief is that funding disappears from programs that don't meet recognized needs. And if you're never going out and looking and saying, are we meeting the needs, then you're endangering your entire program. So I think it's very critical to do program evaluation for both the reasons to internally to ensure that you're meeting the needs of those you're wanting to serve, and also externally to make sure that you are doing a good enough job that you will be valued. So it's critical that you take time to do that, and I would say at least every 2 to 3 years is what I like to see happen. Here's our self-evaluation matrix. And you'll see that the promising practices that a systematic procedure is consistently used throughout the agency to evaluate all components of the AT program, and that is what needs to happen for the AT program, but also should be part of what's happening for other services in your district. I'm sorry, that's my phone. Someone's trying to call me. That's what happens when one has call waiting.
Okay, on this next slide, we're asking you again for a little bit of a poll. So now that we've looked at the 7 indicators, do you feel that they could help you in identifying potential areas for growth in your administrative support for your AT program? And please answer yes, no, or I'm not really sure. And the answers are coming in.
Okay.
It's reassuring to see that most of you, that nobody said no, thank you for that, and that most of you do feel that indeed these would be helpful. Some of you are not sure, and I want to tell you a little bit about a story that happened here for our state. We use the matrices for QIAT across all regions of the state, including a special mailing out to special ed directors. And we, for the special ed directors, we started off with administrative support. The number of calls that I got from administrators after they reviewed their own practice, and quite frankly, they were very honest with themselves and very blunt, and they rated their practice as not being very good. And so that gave us a lot of permission and a lot of opportunities to do some real nice systemic professional development, including to administrators about how they can and should support AT in their districts. Because they were so honest with themselves, they found that it was important to engage in a lot of professional development, both for the administrators and for educators, and it gave them the data they needed to say, this is a way we need to change our system. And so when we repeated the survey 2 years later, again using the QIAT matrix, we found that administrators did spent a lot of time in improving their practice, and that was we got some really nice results. So don't be afraid to share this with your bosses, with your principal, because I think she's going to really be intrigued by seeing what it is that's out there. Share this with your special ed director or with your school superintendent. What the heck? Let's go all the way to the top.
Okay, as we start to wind down here, we would just like to give you some key takeaways. And these are really based on the common errors that we see around the country and that we hear about. And one of the biggest errors we find is that there simply are no procedural guidelines for AT. And we just want to remind you that they're critical. You need something in place. We have seen too many districts where 1 or 2 key people had a wonderful procedure and were incredibly knowledgeable, but they left and the entire thing fell apart because there was nothing written down. There were no guidelines. No one knew what to do without them. And so it's a critical piece to have the continuity that comes from having procedural guidelines. Another error we see is that people don't really understand that assistive technology is part of receiving a free, appropriate public education. And that's perhaps one of the biggest things we can do in terms of professional development in our schools, is help people realize that it is a key piece, that students with disabilities often need assistive technology to help them access the curriculum and make the progress which they are capable of making. We know that resources have to be allocated to AT. When there are no resources, it's very hard to get things done, and you find that people are afraid to mention AT because it'll cost money and there's no budget for that. And so one of the common errors is to have no no financial support for the program. It's really a critical piece that we have to have some resources allocated. Fortunately, much AT has gotten to be very inexpensive compared to what it used to be. We have many resources out there that are free to be downloaded. We have many things that we can try out or borrow, and so it really is good that we don't need as many resources as we used to, but we still need some. And I think, again, another error we see is just a few people shouldering all the responsibility for assistive technology, when really it takes a village. It takes all of us who come into contact with that student to know how to play our role to support the student, to be the best they can be, and to use their assistive technology in an effective manner for the tasks that are critical to their progress. And finally, and this is a prime one for me, we all have our soapboxes, but I think program evaluation is one of mine, because what I see is that when programs are not evaluated, they go the way of the strongest personality, perhaps, or they just don't move forward, or they miss opportunities, because program evaluation is what tells us how we're doing and helps us to move forward. And then certainly we believe the quality indicators can be part of that program evaluation. We have another poll, and this is about thinking about the 7 quality indicators that we have covered today for you. We'd like you to think about which one of these you might want to focus on to improve the administrative support in your school. And so if you would start, and I see some responses coming in. Some of you knew right away what you wanted. For others, you'll have to think about it a minute, but we will give you time to respond. I know this is sometimes a hard question to force you to make a choice, but it gives you that first step you might do following this if you have made that choice. So we think it's critical for you. Well, we've heard from about 40 of the 70-some participants. And that's slowing down. I'm going to give you another couple seconds. Okay. I'm going to skip to the results. We had a couple clear favorites here. And one is addressing the need for written procedures. Great. We still have a few more responses coming in. That's wonderful. And looking at having ongoing AT learning opportunities. So thank you for reflecting on that. Reflection is what helps us move forward. It gives us the direction that we need. So I'm pleased that you were able to do that.
Okay, what we're going to do now is take a look at the QIAT website. This is the website for the quality indicators in assistive technology. Oh my goodness, my computer is now trying to get me to download new software. I hope that doesn't happen. So Penny just navigated to the QIAT website, and there's a number of resources there that we think are helpful to you. I want to show you the resources page, so if you look across, and I'm trying to point to things, and Penny's got the cursor. Right. So across the top we have the tabs, and one of them says Resources. And Penny clicked on that, and we have 2 sets of types of resources. The first are those that are developed by the QIAT community. That is, we get input from participants in professional development and seminars, and then we update them and polish them off with the QIAT Leadership Team. So we have guiding documents. Every area, all of the indicator areas have a guiding document. Penny is pointing to the guiding document for administrative support. And inside that guiding document, you're going to find the 7 indicators, that we talked about today, as well as their intent statements, some explanatory information, and some short examples. There are also items in there inside the resource bank, and these are items that are developed by members of the QIAT community. So Penny, if you can go up to the resource bank. These are documents that are developed by people who participate on the QIAT listserv, and these are documents that they've developed and are sharing with all of us. So if you look at some of these, you see there's a wide range of topics. These are things that folks self-select to share, and they make them available to us. And these are posted in order of frequency of when they've been submitted. So the most recent ones are on the top. The older ones are down on the bottom. So they're not ranked according to value or how important we think they are. That's just in chronological order. So if you look through there, there's a lot of really good tools, really good strategies that folks have used, and they are available for you to download, make use of. And the owner of each document, or the person who shared it, has their name there, so you can contact them if you want to, just because I think it's polite if you're going to adapt or change something to let them know how their work is being used. So one of the ones that we'd like to point out is the form that's about parent-owned equipment. This was posted by our colleague and friend Gail Bowser. And we had a lot of conversation just this past week on the QIAT listserv about responsibility for parentally owned equipment or school-owned equipment and who's responsible for damaging it. So this is a critical conversation that's ongoing. So many districts are struggling with how to handle this. So it's really a great opportunity to see that, share that, and see if it pertains to your practice or ways that you can share that. Make it useful for yourself.
Where I want to be.
That's the problem with navigating while we do this.
Another user is logged in. Yeah, no kidding.
So if you go to the QIAT website, Penny, if you want to talk about that.
I will. So this is the home page. We had taken you directly to the resource page, but this is the home page. And you will find that we periodically update it, so please take a look at it for some of the resources, the announcements. It's also the place where you can join the QIAT list, which is a list of about over 3,000 assistive technology practitioners and parents of students who use assistive technology who have a common interest in assistive technology and education. It's a place where you can learn a lot every day, and you can also ask questions and get responses from people all over the world. We have members on this list from 17 countries, although most of them are from the United States. We just got that interesting information this week. I also wanted to point out to you that you can go back to the AbleNet University website and see any of these sessions on the professional development for the quality indicators, and they are on the professional development page under the tab recorded:@/switches.
And if you want to find any of those documents that we just talked about, the QIAT website is in the bottom right-hand corner of the page, http://www.qiat.org, and that'll take you to the website. It's pretty easy to navigate. If you want to find the documents we just talked about, go under the resource tab. We have both resources and the resource bank. The bank are those items that are submitted by members of the QIAT community. So what I'd like to give you a chance is to ask questions, make comments, give us suggestions on ideas, thoughts that you have. This is your opportunity to talk to us. You can use the chat box in the lower left-hand corner of your screen.
Yes, we're looking forward to that. And Joan did point out, you just have to type in quiat.org. You don't have to put indicators.nobility.org. That's just because we're hosted by a group that supports the work of QIAT. But it will get to you. You will get to it with quiat.org.
There's also, if you would want to ask the QIAT leadership any question or make a just talk to the whole leadership as a group, and there are 10 or 11 of us. I always forget how many of us there are in the QIAT leadership. The email on the left-hand side, quiatleadership@gmail.com. we'll get to the entire QIAT leadership, and we will respond to you. So
right, and that includes all of us that have done these webinars.
Exactly.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions.
No, nor am I.
Put you to sleep, or we just answered every single one of your questions. Now, I'm hoping it's not the first.
Okay, here's a question from John. Is it advised to provide training to an IT person or hire an AT-specific person for suggestion of new devices, training on devices, repairing devices, and replacement? Well, here's the scoop. I think it might be both and. An AT-specific individual will have more knowledge regarding special education, disability issues, but that IT person is absolutely critical to making sure that systems work across the school. So in many places, we have an AT person who works in special ed and collaborates with the IT person. In some districts that we've talked with, we have an AT person inside the IT division, but the thing that's really important about selection of assistive technology is that AT really is the responsibility of all special educators. We all need to consider assistive technology during the development of an IEP, so unless all of us know something about AT, we're unable to talk about this with any fidelity. So it's really critical that we talk about this. I see Gail Bowser has asked, can you tell us a story about how it works well at a district? I think, Gail, you're asking when I said that we've had some instances where we have an AT person who's part of an IT team and it worked very well. There's a specific district I'm thinking about in Minnesota where inside the IT team, they do have the AT person whose work it is to be kind of the troubleshooter. That district has spent a lot of time in professional development, and so all of their special educators are aware of some of the skills and knowledge they need to have in assistive technology. But when they find that they need help, they go to their AT staff person, who can talk about what technology has the features that will work well within the school system, is knowledgeable about devices, and gives us the opportunity to bring that IT into the conversation. So there's no barrier about, well, we can't load that to our network, which was a problem we used to have pretty consistently back in the bad old days. So one of the things we like to talk about is making this seamless. We'd like to think about making this transparent, and good technology, quite frankly, is good technology. Some good technology is also assistive technology. Some technology that I use becomes assistive technology for someone else, but it all depends on that individual need. So, okay, and by the way, we would like to say that we also enjoy these webinars. Jocelyn said thank you for that. Our next webinar is on June 4th at 11:30 Central Time, and it is going to be sort of a wrap-up on how to use QIAT Resource to improve your practice. So we look forward to having you participate in that. Invite your friends. Because these are fun for us as well as, I hope, fun for the participants. And we hope that we'd like to thank you for, and the presenters for that, by the way, will be Joy Zabala and Scott Marsilius, both very good presenters. We'd like to thank you for joining us today. We hope you found it useful and that you will come back for our June 4th session. Thank you very much.